What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand for what is a very sad day in Dodgers land because news broke this morning that Walker Buehler has signed a one-year deal with a team not named the Los Angeles Dodgers. That would be the Boston Red Sox. Daniel, it's a one-year, $21.05 million deal with some incentives. This is the exact same number as the qualifying offer with some incentives included. So give me just your immediate reaction when you wake up and see the news this morning that Buehler's gone.
I mean, I feel like we knew it was kind of coming here. I know we kind of held out hope that he would be back, but I think after the Blake Snell signing, knowing that Roki Sasaki is going to be a priority, moving forward into January, Clayton Kershaw is going to be back at some point. It just felt like there, with after the Blake Snell signing, it just felt like there wasn't really a place for Walker in this rotation. Obviously, we all would have loved to have him back, but at the same time, I understand this from his perspective. Like he wants to go somewhere where he could be, a mainstay in the rotation, not have to worry about having a couple bad starts and losing his job or whatever, because this is a one-year deal. So he's going to go back into free agency next winter. And what his hope is he could have a much better year and reestablish that value and get, a more long-term deal, high money type deal. And just looking at the overall outlook of the Dodgers rotation, it just wasn't like a sure thing that he would be, in that rotation all season long. And I'm guessing that's what he was looking for. So as unfortunate as it is, it felt like it was trending this way for a while, and now it's official.
Yeah, and I want to start off by saying good for Walker Buehler. As a reminder, this is a guy who had never hit free agency before. This is a big number, but basically in his career as a Dodger from age 20 through 29, he made $30 million. So good for him to be able to go out and get a contract for $21 million in 1 year. And again, he's hoping that it's not the last contract that he signs. But the key, I think, that a lot of Dodgers fans are picking up on, and I'm going to get to some of my favorite Walker Buehler moments and remembering his career as a Dodger here in just a minute. But I think a lot of people are looking and saying the Dodgers could have just offered him the qualifying offer, Daniel. And there's been different reports about did they not do it because they didn't think he was worth it. Both MLB Trade Rumors and The Athletic had predictions well below this number. They were projected, I believe The Athletic was like $10 million plus incentives. Trade Rumors, I believe, was like $14 million. So the qualifying offer, according to some league-wide, seems like a big number, but that's ultimately what he ends up getting. So we don't know if the Dodgers didn't offer the qualifying offer because they didn't think he was worth it or because they wanted to show some respect, allow him time and sort of a normal free agency process. But now that we know the numbers, are you at all surprised that the Dodgers didn't just match? Because they could have matched, but they chose not to.
Yeah, I don't think it's about money. Like kind of like I was just saying, I just think the Dodgers rotation is pretty set here. And yeah, sure, giving 21 million to Buehler wouldn't change a whole lot. Like if you're the Dodgers, you could spend whatever you want. I think it's just more about having spots in your rotation. And if we're being honest, if you look at the Dodgers rotation, there's not too many spots available. And obviously they're serious about Roki, Sasaki. So if you add him to the mix as well, there isn't really room for Buehler. And I just think it's more of a timing thing than anything. Like if we were still in January and you find out that, hey, we're not getting Roki Sasaki,
yeah,
I bet the first move would have been to call Buehler and offer probably the same exact deal and say, come on back. But understandable that Walker didn't want to wait until the middle of January to find a new team. So, a lot of it just came down to the timing. And of course, you offer the qualifying offer at the beginning of the offseason, not knowing what the negotiations are going to look like down the road.
Yeah.
Like, I do think, there was a possibility that Buehler got some multi-year offers, and who knows, maybe he might have, but he just preferred this one-year deal to kind of reestablish himself and then go for the bigger payday next offseason. So I just think between the timing, between, the overall pitching depth in the organization, it just didn't really make sense to sign him to sign him right now, at least. And I think it had more to do with that than like, oh, they didn't want to match, whatever this offer was. Because at the end of the day, it's a one-year deal. Like, it's not like they broke the bank, the Red Sox broke the bank to sign Buehler. And you're like, all right, like, we can't match that. Like, the saying goes, there's no such thing as a bad one-year deal. So I do think, in a world where the Dodgers didn't re-sign Blake Snell, in a world where they're not heavily in the mix for Roki Sasaki, they definitely would have loved to bring back, Walker Buehler at this price point. Like, this is a Dodgers type of deal where it's like, this is a guy who is a former Cy Young candidate who's had his injury history, but the upside is still there. So that's the type of guy the Dodgers usually bring in, especially when you're talking about a 1-year deal, probably a little higher AAV than if it was a more longer term deal. So everything, would have made sense for the Dodgers. It's just where they're at right now. There isn't really a spot for him. So I get it.
Yeah, I think the timing point you make with Sasaki is a good one. I mean, you look at the rotation, Snell, Glasnow, Yamamoto are your top three. You're expecting Ohtani to come back at some point in 2025. Clayton Kershaw still expected to re-sign, and he'll be back at some point in 2025. Then you've got the question mark of Roki Sasaki. But if Sasaki were to sign, that's 6 guys. Now, obviously, projecting health, all that kind of stuff, I get it. But even behind them, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Landon Knack, Bobby Miller, Nick Frasso, Ben Kasparius, Justin Robleski, all those guys are expected to be available and healthy at the beginning of the year, not even mentioning the dudes coming back from Tommy John or shoulder surgery or whatever. And so I just named 13 players. And yes, you can never have enough pitching, but if you're the Dodgers and you're looking at a guy like Walker Buehler, who selfishly I obviously would have loved to see back, I imagine you're like, at some point, if everybody's healthy, like we want Dustin May to get a chance to pitch. We want Tony Gonsolin to get a chance to pitch. You don't want to just fill up your rotation with guys in Buehler that, look, if we're being honest, I think you and I are both very high on Buehler. We're going to talk about the performance he had at the beginning of the season, but it's not like we're talking about a guy who's going to be going out and competing for Cy Young Award in 2025. I don't think he's not a guy that belongs in the Snell, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Ohtani camp at the top of this rotation. And so if you're signing a guy kind of to be your number 4, number 5, and you've got that list of 7 young guys that I just mentioned, I think it makes some sense to be able to say, like, not that we're cheap, but like maybe this is one place we can save $21 million on the roster and just let some young guys eat up some innings, see what we've got, and that kind of thing. So I think your point about the timing and just the depth that they have in the organization, well, yes, you can't have enough pitching. Maybe they kind of do.
Yeah, and look, you make a good point. Like, you want to give those young guys innings to see what you have in them and to further their development. And maybe you find the next Walker Buehler who you could have on a really cheap contract for the next 5 or 6 years. But if you're just going out and signing every free agent pitcher, which, don't get me wrong, like we love that the Dodgers are bringing in a lot of pitching. We know they're going to need a ton of starting pitchers. But at the end of the day, you do want to give a runway to those young guys. You want to develop them, bring them up so that you have, sustainable pitching for years to come. Like, if you're just, stashing some of these guys at AAA, you don't really know what you have in them. And then, of course, injuries are going to come up and they're going to get their chances. But I do think, you mentioned, even like the Dustin Mays and Tony Gonsolins, like, they're coming back from injury, but those are guys who almost were ready to pitch at the end of last season. So they're definitely going to be ready at the start of 2025. So there's just not spots for everyone at the end of the day. So, it hurts. We all love Walker Buehler, and I'm excited to get into, some of his best moments as a Dodger with you right now. But I just think, the tea leaves have shown in recent weeks that, this was coming.
Let's get into his career, and I want to give a shout out to our guy, Scott Gearman. Scott wrote an article back in 2022 kind of highlighting the first 100 starts of Walker Buehler's career that I did a bunch of reading on this morning, and it's fantastic stuff, so go check that out on DodgerBlue.com. But when you look at Buehler's career, I want to look big picture and then highlight in some moments. So he debuts in 2017. He doesn't win the Rookie of the Year because he fell behind a couple guys by the name of Ronald Acuna Jr. and Juan Soto. Somehow those two guys were in the mix. 2018, though, is his breakout year. 2.62 ERA, 2.81 expected ERA in his sophomore season. Absolutely dominant. Bounces back in 2019, 30 starts, 3.26 ERA, 5.1 wins above replacement heading into the 2020 shortened COVID season. 3.44 ERA in that one, more postseason heroics in 2020, which we're going to get to in a second. But 2021 was the best season of his career. 33 starts, 207 innings, 2.47 ERA, and 5.6 wins above replacement. From 2019 to 2021 was Buehler's peak. And we're talking about one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball for 3 seasons, regular season, postseason included. And 2022 is kind of the last peak. He gets handed the ball on opening day, which for the Dodgers and on a team that has Clayton Kershaw is a big deal. Sadly, that was kind of the beginning of the end for Buehler. He throws just 65 innings in 2022, undergoes Tommy John surgery, which costs him all of 23. And then 2024, we know the regular season, the struggles he had, 5.38 ERA, career worst marks sort of across the board. However, he ends that, as you pointed out on social media, not only with 13 scoreless innings to end his career as a Dodger in the NLDS, NLCS, and World Series, but getting the final out for the Dodgers. And so 13 scoreless innings, World Series save, a great stat from Scott. In his first 100 starts, he had just 13 losses, which is a major league record for fewest number of losses in 100 starts. And then as a Dodger, regular season, 122 starts, 713 innings, a 3.27 ERA, and 15 wins above replacement. How about this in the postseason, though, Daniel? And this is the storyline with Buehler, right? 94 2/3, 3.04 ERA in 18 starts and 1 relief appearances, multiple World Series appearances in there when you needed him. 94 innings, 3.04 ERA. That's the Walker Buehler that all of us are going to remember.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's two things that I'm going to remember. One is just the postseason stuff. Like you just broke it down. This dude is an absolute gamer. Like regardless of what's happening in the regular season, like, when the lights are brightest, like this guy's going to show up and he's going to give you everything he has on that mound, whether it's for 4 innings, 5 innings, 6 innings, 1 inning, as we saw in Game 5 of the World Series. Like whatever it is, he's going to go out there and give you whatever he has, and he's going to compete at a high level, which we live in a world where a lot of times people kind of shy away from the big moment or whatever. Like they're too afraid of failure. And I think that's the thing with Walker Buehler is he was never afraid, to fail. Like he was willing to put that on his shoulders to go out there and try to do whatever he could to help his team win. And that's the second thing I'll remember from him is that he was always a team first guy. Like he was willing to do whatever it took to help his team win, whether that be pitching on 3 days rest, which is what we saw in the 2021 postseason when Max Scherzer was unwilling to make his start. Walker Buehler said, fine, I'll pitch. And there's no way of knowing for sure, but obviously you see him end up getting Tommy John surgery the following year. Like it's hard not to imagine that 2021 postseason played a role in that. And this is a guy who has not gotten his big contract yet. And he didn't really care about that. Like he was willing to pitch for his team to help them win the World Series. And we saw that again in the postseason this year. Like he could have easily said in that Game 5, like, no, like I'm not pitching out of the bullpen. Like, excuse me, I'm about to be a free agent. Like, I want to protect my arm. I've had all these injuries. Like I'm not pitching out of the bullpen on 1 day rest, but he was the opposite of that. He said, hey, I'm going out to the bullpen. I'm ready if you need me, again, without the guarantee of a long-term deal. So to me, just that selflessness, that team first attitude, just that dog in him, like willing to do whatever it takes, that's what I'll remember most.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm with you. The Game 4 of the NLDS, I believe it was in 2021, when he took the ball on 3 days rest, down 2-1. That's peak, right? And we don't have to imagine what it would have been like for a guy to refuse the ball, because sadly we experienced that. That was Max Scherzer refusing to take the ball because, 100 reasons why he blamed the Dodgers. But Buehler takes the ball, 4 1/3, 1 earned run in a game the Dodgers needed to have. They end up winning that game and beating the Giants in that series. And so I'm with you. I hope those are the two things that we remember about Walker Buehler big picture is A, how good he was in the postseason, and B, how he just was constantly willing to put his arm and his body on the line for the Dodgers, and the Dodgers reap the benefit. I would love to hear comments on this below, because this is just a morning of kind of list that I put together, and I'm sure there are already things that I'm forgetting, but I tried to put together a top 5 moments from Walker Buehler's career as a Dodger. And again, I apologize in advance if I missed something egregious. We're doing our best here, but I'll start with 5 and work my way back. Number 5 to me is 2024 NLCS Game 3. 2024 is going to be a constant theme in this list. But the series is tied 1-1 against the Mets. And again, that's going to be a constant theme. The number of times that Walker Buehler took the ball in a situation where his team desperately needed a win. Well, it's Game 3 of the NLCS, 4 shutout innings. He coming off the rough NLDS start against the Padres, which again, I'll make 25 excuses for him about ground balls that get through. And then he finishes off 3 shutout in that one. But 2024 NLCS, again, 4 shutout innings. They come back, they win that game. They take a 2-1 lead in the NLCS. The rest is history. Number 4 for me, and then I'll get your reaction to this, 2018 Game 163. I think this is one of the more memorable games for most Dodger fans when it comes to Walker Buehler. And maybe it should have been higher. It's hard to put it ahead of 3 World Series games that are coming next after this. But game 163, 6 2/3, 1 hit, no earned run, 5-2 win over the Rockies. Weirdly enough, it's not a World Series game, Daniel, but that to me, that feels like the game that I have in my mind when I think about Walker Buehler.
For sure. And that's like, that was kind of like the coming out party, right? Because
Yeah.
like that 2018 was his first full season in the big leagues, and
Yep.
he hadn't pitched in any playoff games before that. So that was kind of like his first test, and like you said, game 163 isn't a World Series game, but it is, I don't want to say winner take all, because I think they still would have been the wild card team if they had lost that game. But you're talking about the difference of having to play a 1-game wild
Yep.
card or getting to host a division series. So that was a massive game. And I remember I was at that game. Me and Matt Moreno were at that game with Ian Chin, who owns our company, and that was a fun one. Like he absolutely shoved that game.
Yeah.
It felt like it was one of those dominant performances where it kind of felt like the Rockies just like had no chance. Like like no
Yeah.
matter what he threw, like they couldn't hit it. And then that was kind of a sign of things to come, because obviously we know what he's done in the postseason. I'm sure some of these top 3 moments will be some more of those outings, so we could get into those. But yeah, the game 163 was all time stuff.
Number 3 for me is 2020 World Series Game 3. Tell me if you've heard this before. He enters the series with the series tied 1-1, and he goes 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned, 10 strikeouts against the Rays. Again, maybe you can make a case that this deserves to be number 2 on this list. Maybe it's recency bias why it's number 3. But that's my third one. And then second, 2024 World Series Game 3, 5 shutout innings against the Yankees in New York. It was this big deal. Oh, they're going back to New York up 2-0. The Yankees desperately need this game. And Walker Buehler, what does he do? 5 shutout in the Bronx on a night when, I don't want to say the Dodgers quote unquote needed it, but it sure as heck didn't hurt to get those. So before we get to number 1, which is the obvious one here, and there's no debate about that, give me your reactions to the Game 3 performances in both 2020 and 2024 in the World Series.
Yeah, it's just another case of when you need him most, Walker Buehler came through in a big way. And I think that the was it the Rays one? Yeah, he struck out 10 in that Rays game. Like, I think we forget that he's had to reinvent himself as a pitcher, since the injuries. But before that, he was pretty dominant. Like, he was striking out 8 to 10 almost every outing. I think he had 1 or 2 in the regular season where he struck out like 16 or something. Like that was crazy as well. But yeah, I mean, the postseason games are kind of when he always shines the most.
Number 1 on this list, no surprises, 2024 World Series, game number 5, 1 day's rest, no hits, no walks, 2 strikeouts, a celebration for the ages. This is the picture that everybody's going to have of Walker Buehler, rightfully so, for the rest of their lives. It deserves to be a statue somewhere. I'm not saying outside Dodger Stadium, that's sort of hallowed ground, but someone somewhere needs to build a Walker Buehler statue with the "Are you not entertained" pose. But it's just vintage Walker Buehler. A, the effectiveness, getting the job done, but B, walking down to the dugout on 1 day's rest, basically lying about whether or not he was warmed up and ready to go, and finding himself in the biggest moment in the biggest spot and then getting the job done.
Yeah, and honestly, like even despite the 2024 season that Walker Buehler had, like I think you'll agree with this. Like, when he took the mound to close that out in the World Series, like that game was over. Like, there was no chance that he was blowing that. Like, we all knew this is the guy that we want on the mound in this spot. And obviously the Dodgers pitching staff is full of incredible pitchers. And of course, they kind of ran out of their bullpen that game. But I think regardless of who is available, I think we're all good with 21 on the mound in that spot. And I do think it was, poetic justice that he gets the final out there, that he gets to celebrate that big moment, considering everything that he's gone through. So yeah, that was definitely an emotional one. Obviously, we love that the Dodgers won the World Series. We were covering it all the way through, but just the fact that he was on the mound for that final out, like, made it just a little more special, I would say.
Yeah, I've already said that him just even being in the bullpen was like one of my top 5 moments of the entire postseason run. Just hearing him out there. And then, of course, Fabian Ardia's story of him and Clayton Kershaw and Andrew Friedman. It's all incredible stuff. One of the games we didn't mention was that 2021 NLDS Game 4 on short rest against the Giants in, look, it wasn't a World Series, but if you want to talk about what it would have been like to lose to the Giants in that series, down 2-1, that would have sucked. 4 1/3, 1 earned run. So, I mean, not an incredibly dominant performance, but on 3 days rest to come out, give your team a chance to win. Of course, they come back and do it. I think that deserves credit. I know I'm putting you on the spot. Are there any other sort of moments in your mind of Walker Buehler that maybe kind of belong in an honorable mention category?
I think similar to the outing that you just mentioned was I think it was Game 7 in Milwaukee in 2018. He got the start, and it was a similar thing where he didn't necessarily go deep into the game, like he didn't have his best stuff, but he grinded it out and was able to keep the Brewers' run total low enough to where the Dodgers were in a position to win the game, and then obviously Yasiel Puig hit that big homer. I think Cody hit a big homer too, and the Dodgers advanced to the World Series. But I think that 2018 run was a pretty incredible one from him. Like it starts with the game 163. Then he pitches, he pitches in that Game 7 to get them to the World Series, and then of course in the World Series against Boston, he has that incredible outing that kind of goes to waste because the Dodgers couldn't score. It ends up going 18 innings or whatever it was in that Game 3. But I think if the Dodgers were able to score in that Game 3, then he would have been the story of that World Series just with that outing he had against the Red Sox.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the Game 7 against the Brewers. I believe he had I was just looking up 4 2/3, 6 hits, 1 earned, 7 strikeouts in that one. Again, Game 7 of the NLCS, the Dodgers go on to win. Again, you see 6 hits, it's like 4 2/3, but this is just like Buehler just stacked these performances. Like how many guys, Daniel, could have 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts in a Game 7 performance? And it's kind of like the 6th or 7th best moment that he had in the postseason. Because again, we're talking about 4 shutout in an LCS game win. We're talking about World Series, Game 163. You mentioned the Red Sox one. Scott does a great job in the article I referenced earlier, talking about that as well, just kind of how it is a forgotten performance because of how that game plays out. And of course, the Dodgers end up losing it. But the fact that we have such a catalog of games to go back to from Walker Buehler, you mentioned that stretch. I think it was in 2021. It's either 19 or 21, but he had like a 6-week stretch where he had 2 complete games with 15 plus strikeouts in like 5 weeks or something. So the peak that this guy had in a regular season, 2019, 20, and 21, as well as the postseason stuff, is remarkable. So I'd love to hear from people your favorite Walker Buehler memory. That's the other thing. There's games that people were just at, moments they've seen that maybe don't qualify as the best they've ever seen, but for them personally, the feelings that it gave you, the emotions attached to it, make it special. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Are there moments we're missing in the Walker Buehler catalog? But again, it's a good day for Walker Buehler. He gets paid. It's a sad day for the Dodgers fans because I've joked I desperately wanted a gold-trimmed Walker Buehler Dodgers jersey when those come out. I will not be getting one, sadly, but he will go down forever as a Dodgers legend, Daniel.
Yeah, and I will say, like, you never know. It's a 1-year deal.
Yep.
Had
the same thought.
Could end up back here down the road. Also, who knows if the Red Sox season goes south, he could be a trade target in July. So, like you said, it is a sad day, but who knows? Maybe we'll reconnect with our old friend in the future. But either way, we wish him all the best. Like, I hope he goes out and has a massive year in 2025 and gets a big deal in free agency that he's deserved for so many years and hasn't had the opportunity to cash out on. But yeah, nothing bad for me to say about Walker Buehler. Like, he's always going to be a Dodger legend to me.
Absolutely. And look, I'm glad I'm not the only one thinking like, I don't know, if the Boston season goes sideways, the Dodgers need a starter in 3 or 4 months. Who knows? A year from now, Walker Buehler needs another prove it deal. Lots of ways this could go. And I'm hopeful that he's able to find his way back to the Dodgers eventually. That is Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel. If you're new around here, please subscribe, ring the notification bell. Tons of content, as always, coming at you on this channel. We will be tons of content even this week throughout the holidays. We'll be back with a live show maybe later this week, but definitely Sunday. And then after the new year, we'll be back to our normal Tuesday night, Thursday night, Sunday night rotation. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. As always, go Dodgers.